and she was a state legislator and has a history of working, to try to get things done. And the thing that also impressed me was that she said, whenever she saw Sarah Palin at these debates, that she went up, gave her a hug, talked about kids, and tried to keep that separate from the issue of running for Congress in terms of making kind of personal attacks or judgments on her. And well, I still think there's going to be a lot of craziness before it's all said and done. But anyway,
well, I also saw a Gen Z 25-year-old young man running for Senate. That is also what we need. Some of these dinosaurs have been there too long. Don Bacon is completely out of touch with people. You can't be out of touch with people and be a good politician, in at least how I look at it. You're supposed to know how and who your constituents are. And it seems to me that in a lot of states, they're pandering to only one side of the aisle.
Welcome back to Native Honor Hours. It feels weird to say that. My name is Ed Zendejas.
Cindy Kraftcat.
It's been an entire summer almost since we've done this.
I can't believe it's fall. No. The answer is just no.
I had a very good summer.
Me too.
Able to have my son and his family, his wife, and my two grandbabies here for a good part of the summer. It was fun. It's very sad to see him go, though.
Well, wasn't it nice coming home to a quiet, clean house?
It was nice, but my grandkids they got to the point where they would see me and come run up to me and grab my leg. So that was really fun. I miss that more than I miss having quiet and all that other stuff.
I have Lucas Tuesdays and Thursdays, and when he leaves, literally, I want to lay down.
So did you complete all of your obligations to the federal government, to the U.S. Probation Office then?
Nobody likes a smart aleck TV host.
I take it that's a yes.
That's not even funny. I'd hate to be thrown in jail in this environment.
It's a good thing about this format that we have and we're not in a studio is that you'll never be able to expose your ankle bracelet.
I'll drop kick you to the head with my ankle bracelet and we'll see how that feels.
Oh, that'll get you.
You know what? I almost think it would be kind of nice to have the ankle bracelet. Then I couldn't leave or go do anything for a week even. That would be my dream.
Well, you just need mind your P's and Q's, as they say. Otherwise, that's a pretty tough time you'd have to do.
We're heading into fall protest time.
Well, there's been a lot of things going on since I don't even know the last time we met, what we were even talking about before. But
we were concerned about what the Supreme Court was going to do in the McGirt case, and I guess they answered us with a resounding "Screw you, Indians."
Well, it was a pretty devastating opinion, but as always, we pick ourselves up and we move on, and we live to fight another day. And I think the big fight coming up is for the survival of the Indian Child Welfare Act.
I also have to say, though, it gives states an awful lot of rights in tribal jurisdiction.
Well, yes and no, depending on where you're at in Indian country, but it did raise a lot of questions on what the Supreme Court is thinking in terms of tribal court jurisdiction. So there's a lot and actually there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and so it'll be interesting to see what we can craft as a response to that. So.
Well, sadly, I have never seen the Supreme Court be more political than this Supreme Court is being. I feel like they ignored precedents. I feel like they ignored the one and only judge who actually understands about Indian country. I think they're following their political beliefs instead of the Constitution and what's right for America is actually what I feel like.
Well, on the other side of that, you'll get people that saying, yeah, they're finally doing something about them Indians, putting them in their place. But, there's a lot of arguments to be made. And like I said, my primary concern right now is the survival of the Indian Child Welfare Act. So
when is that going to be heard?
That's scheduled for oral argument, I believe, sometime first part of November, pretty early in the term. But as you know, there's no guarantee that we're going to get a decision anytime soon. So it's kind of hard to gauge when they will issue an opinion. But there are some things that tribes and other nonprofit organizations that support the Indian Child Welfare Act are attempting to do to sort of preempt, some of the stronger arguments that maybe they have against the Indian Child Welfare Act. So if it's really cool what they did, and it's actually quite genius. And if you give me a minute, I'll try to explain what they're attempting to do.
I shall sit silently and learn. I will listen and learn.
No, you won't. You'll interject something, but give me a minute. The arguments against the Indian Child Welfare Act, there's a couple of them. One of them is one that the Supreme Court has already ruled on, but as you know, this court doesn't seem to hold past precedent with a high regard. So, but the one issue is that it violates the Constitution based on race, that it's a racial classification that it favors Indian preference in terms of adoption and placement preferences. But the Supreme Court has already ruled that statutes based, reflecting, because the Indian Child Welfare Act, you have to be enrolled or eligible for enrollment with the tribe. And the court has previously said that's not a racial classification, that's a political classification. You have to be a citizen or eligible to be a citizen of that tribal nation. And there's two cases that the Supreme Court has held that. It's the Man-Carey case and the Antelope case that deal with whether or not laws directed towards Native people are racially categorized or politically categorized. And the holdings have been, it's a political classification, therefore doesn't violate equal protection regarding a racial class of protected citizens. But like I said, the Supreme Court, you never know what they're going to do. They may go and try to go against those two precedent cases, the Antelope and the Morton versus Man-Carey case. The other argument that hasn't been ruled on is that essentially the Indian Child Welfare Act sort of commandeers or makes the state do things that maybe they shouldn't do under the 10th Amendment. And that's the one that I think has, Native jurists and legal scholars concerned primarily over that argument. But one of the things that I just found out the other day, well, they're trying to preempt that argument, is the federal government funds state foster care subsidies. So if you're as a child and it's in foster care, part of that subsidy to pay foster care payments and other types of health care payments that helps foster parents, because you need to have some kind of assistance when you take on these children. And that part of that money comes from the federal government and it goes to the states, and tribes are sometimes eligible to do that, but they have to go through, it's like emergency management. They have to go through various steps in order to be eligible to get those funds directly from the federal government. So they generally flow through the state, and the state gets a good sum of money to help with these foster care subsidies. But what I saw the other day was that the tribes want to amend that particular piece of legislation that provides a subsidy to add one more section that says, it's pretty plain and pretty simple, but it's pretty genius. It says that the states, if they accept the federal subsidy, they must comply with the Indian Child Welfare Act. What that means is if the states are saying, hey, the Indian Child Welfare Act is making us do stuff we don't want to do. In this instance, it's like getting federal highway dollars. If you like raising the speed limit or lowering the speed limit, if the states want the federal highway dollars, they pretty much have to do what the feds say. But the feds aren't forcing them. They're saying, you don't have to take these dollars. We're not forcing you. But if you do take them, you have to do this, this, and this. What that would do is that would take away, the state's argument that, hey, you're forcing us to do this Indian child welfare stuff and you're imposing this on us. If they amend that piece of legislation that provides foster care subsidies to states, it's the state's choice. You don't have to, comply with the Indian Child Welfare Act, but the consequences of that are you're not getting this federal subsidy either. What they're trying to do now is find some congressional people, preferably in the House Ways and Means Committee, because that's the committee that controls money. And if they can, apparently they had someone that was going to sort of champion this provision, but apparently she died. I think she was from Wisconsin, got in a car wreck, about a month or two ago.
Yeah.
So now they're trying to find somebody, and hopefully we'll see if they can do that. And I think there's a congressional delegate from Nebraska. I think Adrian Smith is on that committee, and hopefully, and the reason why he's important is because the tribes have reservations in his district. So if it should come from anybody, it should come from him. But
what do you think the chances are of it making it through?
Well, it all depends on whether you have an advocate in that committee that's pushing that, and it's you don't know. But to me, that was a pretty smart tactic to take, and it's just a question of whether or not you can get enough people in the Congress that would move that forward. But if it does pass, like I said, it takes away one of the stronger arguments that the Supreme Court would have to decide. And, the tribes would argue that, hey, that argument's moot because Congress has addressed this issue and the states want the subsidy, then they have to comply with it. If they don't want the money, that's up to them. And if they don't want to, comply with the Indian Child Welfare Act, now they just won't get the money. And I think that was a very clever approach to take because it makes the state take a stance, a choice, one way or the other.
I agree and I understand. I just think in this political climate that we stand very little chance of getting something like that through just based on the open racism in Congress and the Senate and the House at this point.
Well, there's always those types of issues that get added into the last minute. And it depends on how much you have somebody that's willing to advocate. And we can segue into the next topic is now there's at least one more Native representative in Congress.
A woman from a Native Alaskan. She's a Yupik.
You know her name?
Yes, I'm looking it up right now.
It's Mary Peltola.
Mary Peltola beats Sarah Palin. Message sent. I know it, but she's a woman. I mean, and to me, that is just Native American women are starting to step up and speak out and take over. I will be very interested to watch her career because now she's going to have to run for the seat again. This was a special election.
In 4 months.
Yep, in 4 months. And she's going to be running against Palin again, who I'm surprised could take time out from watching Russia from her backyard to even run. But she stopped her. She stopped yet another inept politician from getting back into office. Because I think we can all agree Sarah Palin's an inept politician that really doesn't care about Alaska.
The thing that impressed me about reading about her was that, she has a reputation of, working, with others and she was a state legislator and has a history of working, to try to get things done. And the thing that also impressed me was that she said, whenever she saw Sarah Palin at these debates, that she went up, gave her a hug, talked about kids, and tried to keep that separate from the issue of running for Congress in terms of making kind of personal attacks or judgments on her. And to me, that told me a great deal about her approach to politics and how that is really the type of politician that we need and that has been lacking in Congress. One that can, overlook, some of the personal things and try to get things accomplished either legislatively or policy wise that we just haven't been seeing in Congress lately.
Well, plus Alaska has 20% of their population is native. That's the largest population the largest percentage out of any of the states. So it looks like the nations came out in support of her, which I'm also glad to see.
And no, it wasn't just the native nations.
Well, it couldn't have been, but I mean, having a large native population can't hurt.
No, it doesn't hurt, but it takes more than that to get elected to Congress. And I think, the people of Alaska, knowing of her more than we do, certainly trusted her over the other two candidates that had also a sort of a large political track record. So it's good to see that she broke through and hopefully she'll be able to demonstrate her capabilities in these next 4 months and run for re-election and get reelected. So,
well, she won by 6 points, but the 6%, that's good.
You know what else? There's another Native woman. There's actually, we can do a whole show on Native women.
Yeah, I know, right?
I've been saying as Native guys, we're just sitting on the sidelines. But
well, for a lot of women, a lot of non-Caucasian women, we have been in the background. I mean, even in the protests, the women in AIM didn't stand up front. The women with the Panthers didn't stand up front. They were support. I'm glad to see that this generation of women is standing up and going to the forefront. I also think that jobs like you have, and like I had at UNO, the more of these kids we get educated, and the more in my Native studies class, it's maybe 4 natives and all whites, but if I can educate these white students about Native America, maybe they in turn will pay it forward and will never look at natives the same way. Like you, my first question to my class is what I know about Native Americans. And as with every semester, I'm stunned. I am stunned how little people know about Native Americans. And they're open and willing to say it. I know nothing about Native Americans. I think we're changing the narrative. I really do. I think shows like Res Dogs, which unfortunately didn't get an Emmy nod, is not a great thing. Rutherford Falls. I mean, I feel like Indigenous people are on the rise all over the world, hopefully. I also think in the Sarah Palin case, I think people are tired of poor behavior on the part of our politicians. I think the everyday average person doesn't want to hear Sarah Palin's crazy rantings. Actually, I think a lot of Americans, as was proved in, what was it, just Kansas or Iowa? I think a lot of women in America, I think a lot of people are standing up and saying we've had enough of poor behavior.
It was in Kansas to vote on their constitutional amendment about reproductive rights.
Right. And in Nebraska, they couldn't get enough senators to even look at the issue. And Ricketts was mad. I think the people of America are saying enough. We're tired of listening to all the crazy talk in Congress. We want to know who is taking care of us and how they're taking care of us.
Well, I still think there's going to be a lot of craziness before it's all said and done. But anyway,
I also saw a Gen Z 25-year-old young man running for Senate. That is also what we need. Some of these dinosaurs have been there too long. Don Bacon is completely out of touch with people. You can't be out of touch with people and be a good politician, in at least how I look at it. You're supposed to know how and who your constituents are. And it seems to me that in a lot of states, they're pandering to only one side of the aisle, when in reality, the other side of the aisle is equally good. And I think the younger we can get these candidates, the better we are. It's time for some of these dinosaurs to hang it up and go to their house and paint or whatever they're going to do in their retirement, Mitch McConnell.
well, I was also going to mention Native woman who did she make it up into space yet, Kenny? Do you know there was a Native astronaut?
Native astronaut. Let me say her name. I'm looking her up right now. I was so, my mom would have never believed a woman could go into space. My mother and grandmother would have never believed there'd be a woman in office holding a seat in the House or Senate. So much of these things that we were told never could happen are actually happening. And that's amazing. And this woman will be a Native woman, but not the first Native to go into space.
That's John Harrington.
Yeah, we should try and get them back both on our show when they come back.
Why would they ever want to come on our?
Because it's okay. Nicole Anapu Man, and she is
From California, I think.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't tell her tribe, oddly.
It's some rancheria.
Isn't that weird? I've never even heard of that tribe.
There's 573. There's probably about 560 that you haven't heard of.
I know. Some good teacher taught me that.
And
I believe it was a question on your test.
October 3rd is when the mission is supposed to happen.
Yeah, but it's good to see those things happening and more good things. You know who else I wanted to mention and congratulate? Our very own Lady G.
Yeah, I talked to her this morning, actually. She's got a good job advising.
At the University of Arizona.
Yep, one of our students doing good things.
Bear
We've got
down.
Students all over doing good things. The first student I ever recruited to the UNO is now the Native American Outreach Coordinator. My job. The circle was complete. The first one I recruited now has that job.
And who would that be?
Cornelius Levering.
Isn't it
I couldn't be happier. Are you? Well, to me, he's Levering.
No. He goes on
lawyer.
Facebook. He goes by Toussaint Levering, something like that, isn't it, Kenny?
That might be his. That might be his account name. To me, he's Cornelius.
Well, yeah, to me he
Chris
is too.
Channel's a lawyer. Eric Sherman's dealing with the tribes. Our kids are going out and making changes in the world. I couldn't be more pleased. And we help them on their way. That's what's important. We help them on their way, which is why having representation at the higher education level is so important. A lot of these kids, I would say, I'm a 100-year-old woman and I'm in school. If I can do it, you can do it. They need to see somebody succeed. Our young man, okay, I just am having a big senior moment. One of our young men is on his way to the seminary as we speak. Jacob's on his way to the seminary. We have kids going everywhere and doing everything. Lily Tamayo is working with youth. I mean, education is important. And I think it's being pushed a lot to the background for people of color. The student loan forgiveness is amazing because 75% of that money is going to go to African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans, the ones with the highest debt, because they don't have any help getting through college. You know what it's like. And they say, oh, they got all these student loans. That's still not enough. The student loans and the Pell Grants for some of these kids is still not enough. So I think the student loan forgiveness is going to help so many kids. It breaks my heart for people to say, well, I didn't go to college, I shouldn't have to pay for it. Well, you're not. In a very real way, you are not paying for it, you ignorant fool.
You know, I said this on this program. I don't know if you remember this, but there was, under the previous administration, there was a tariff war with China. You remember that?
Yes.
And it cost a lot of farmers a huge part of their market because China was imposing tariffs on some of the grain that in retaliation for the tariffs that were placed on their products. And what the administration did was bail them out to the tune of billions of dollars. And
PPP loan forgiveness.
If you don't remember, I'm sure you don't, those farmers did not even ask for it. They wanted to make sure that they were taken care of because It was a political decision. They wanted to make sure that, that if they when they got harmed, that it wasn't going to have any blowback on them politically. And not to mention many of the pandemic loans to businesses that will never get paid back, billions of dollars that will never get paid back. And it doesn't matter the political, whether you're Democrat or Republican, but we forgive loans on both sides of the political spectrum, all sides of the political spectrum.
One of our gubernatorial candidates had a lot of his thousands of dollars of PPO loans forgiven.
And to make this, political, I know it's unavoidable, but we do this we forgive loans to people every day, and to make, students, to demonize them. Oh, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't even gone to school. If you, that's what we have been preaching to our kids, that you have to get an education in order to compete. And when that becomes unattainable and they take out loans, I mean, I think it was humane to do that. And given the fact that we have forgiven a whole sorts of loans before to other people, I don't understand. It's more hypocrisy than anything else. We're just selective in our outrage when it comes to that. So I think it was.
I was 45 years old and a waitress. Well, I went to college and got my degree and my master's degree, and I owe as much as a house. But it changed my life. I learned to stand up. I learned so much from you and other educators. It changed my life. I was the Native American Outreach Coordinator. I will be paying off student loans for the rest of my life, and $20,000 is great, but not going to help me totally. But still, it was worth it. It was worth it. I would have been a 65-year-old waitress with no retirement. What would have happened to me? Well, and those were the people who were taking out the student loans, the people who there was no other way I could have gone to college. Rosebud doesn't help a lot with college finances. There would have been no other way for me to get through other than to take student loans. And I did. And it was worth every penny. So did my daughter. Her mother was poor. She had to take student loans out. So, but for her, $20,000 would pretty much get rid of it. And then she could start fresh. Well, I don't understand why people are so against it.
As someone who has who took out student loans and paid them back, I have kids that have done likewise, that have paid back their student loans. I think most, if not all of them, have been supportive of student loan forgiveness because of the importance of encouraging students to to go to school, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I think that's what will help change as you said, and as I have said, the narrative of what goes on in this country. But I also want to spend some time a little bit.
Well, I just have one more thing to say about that. Also, it's forcing them to take a good hard look at some of the predatory lenders. Some of these lenders did real bad things, and it's causing someone to finally look at how these kids are getting harassed, how they're never paying off their student loans because of interest. There's a lot that goes into this student loan business, and someone is finally looking at it. Did you see that DeJoy said they should just disband the Department of Education? It doesn't do anything. It maybe doesn't do anything for her kids and her, who went through all kinds of private schools. The Department of Education protects our children and their education.
Well, one final thing I will say about this, and it has to do with the interest rates. For the longest time, the Fed, which sets their interest rates and what banks and things can borrow, for the longest time, the interest rate was zero. So banks were able to borrow at a 0% interest rate and turn around and charge these rates for student loans and other things that so that in and of itself was a subsidy to banks.
Yes.
We need to be careful about when we point fingers about who gets break from what the federal government does. We all benefit from that one way or the other. But I want to
Well,
do.
that's another way of demonizing and separating us from each other. Everything that goes on seems to put one side here and one side there. Nobody is saying, hey, let's look at this commonly. It's going to help a lot of students, not just African Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics. There's a lot of other students that it will help, but because of the majority of it going to help students of color, then
you shouldn't have said that. That's just an argument against loan forgiveness by those who aren't approved. It's just going to minority students. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about knuckleheads, because this is a subject that
is dear to your heart.
Rearing its head. What's that?
I said a subject that's dear to your heart.
Well, yeah, it's University of North Dakota is coming to Nebraska to play football this weekend, and I have to call out my own alma mater. There was an incident where racial slurs were uttered by a fan directed at a player.
Well, and did you see what they did though? They handled it in a very admirable way. The man is banned from ever going.
No, I'm still going to call out my alma mater. I'm wearing my BYU shirt today, but they still need to be called out because they did nothing. They did nothing. Even the coach was informed about it, and they have been called out. It was made national news, and they deserve it. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to, to at least address this issue, by calling it out when it happens. And in that vein, I was the first one that was calling out my alma mater when, I was beside myself. I was just, it just ate me at the core to think that they did nothing, that our students did not have the mindset to say, that's wrong, I need to call it out. And in that vein, I want to point out that I would like to see the same type of national coverage when there's going to be a whole fan base coming in from North Dakota. And I guarantee you, they are going to be wearing Fighting Sioux jerseys, and they're going to be yelling, "Go Sioux," at Lincoln Memorial Stadium. And that is a racist, action by that fan base.
Yep.
They're going to be doing all of the tomahawk chops and all that. And we need to be calling them out as fervently as we called out, my alma mater for their inaction.
But do you think the University of Nebraska at Lincoln will take steps?
No, but that's what I'm saying. They should. And I think there needs to be something said just as vocally about what is going to happen in Lincoln and other campuses when you see that. Florida State, I hate that tomahawk chop. And
they do that at Bellevue.
Yeah. And
I used to work at Famous Dave's, and one Friday night, my boss came running into the back room and said, just go home. I said, what did I do? He said, Cindy, just give me your money. Just go home. I'll give you your tips. And I said, why? What's wrong with you? He said, just leave, just leave. So I thought, what is he talking about? I walked out, and the entire restaurant was doing the tomahawk chop. I turned around and looked at him, and I said, I'm going to fight. He said, just leave. And I did. I just left. I just walked out. And that was pretty much the end of me, Famous Dave's in Bellevue.
But in this instance, when that happens, we're once again going to be selective in our outrage. There should be as much light shined on what happens in Lincoln or wherever Florida State is playing, or whatever school, colleges, or high school have those Indian mascots, and they're still.
And see, now we're getting high school. High schools need to be policed, especially in Nebraska. Every day I read things that have happened at a high school game. Creighton, look what happened at Creighton Prep.
So I'm going to call out a preemptive knucklehead, because I know it's going to happen. The University of North Dakota fan base that's going to come into Lincoln, Nebraska, wearing they just can't give up their Fighting Sioux mascot, and
they won't give it up. They can, they won't.
No, and officially they are the Fighting Hawks, but they won't ever embrace that. For them, there will always be the Fighting Sioux. Doesn't matter what anybody's going to say. So for them, I'm doing a preemptive knucklehead of the week, because I know they're going to do it.
I know too, and Thank God my mom is dead, because if my dad was still coaching and that went on, I'd be calling you saying I have to get mom out of jail.
So Kenny, are we about
Hey, another
Here.
one more knucklehead thing I'd like to throw
One
in.
more.
Did you see our dear friend Christy Nome is under investigation for misusing her office? She
Well,
got her doctor a job.
It was the Christy Nome Knucklehead of the Week award.
Yeah,
So she's
hopefully
just
they'll get her.
cementing that knucklehead of
Because every week there's something she's done that is dumber than the week before. Did you read the new educational directives that are coming out of South Dakota? It's not good.
I don't
We
know.
don't want to make white South Dakotans feel bad about what happened to Native Americans. They didn't do it. Why should they learn about it?
I have a
and feel
feeling
bad?
that I keep telling my students that in about a year's time, I may not be able to teach what I'm teaching in class right now.
You know, a lot of us should be very afraid, because one of the gubernatorial candidates was the one who went to the school, went to the Board of Regents and demanded that we quit teaching these things. Demanded.
No, he was on the Board of Regents and introduced the resolution.
Yep.
So I don't know if the other side has any shot of winning, but it's about a 99% chance that that candidate is going to be elected governor of the state. And it's
Well, we can hope not.
Sure.
If you won't debate and you won't come into the city of Lincoln or Omaha, you're missing out on a large portion of the population.
well, it doesn't matter. I think it's going to happen, and I think as soon as they get in the legislative session, we're going to talk about banning some of the things that I teach in my classes. So,
And you and I are going to be thrown in jail because we will link our arms and protest.
No, I'll just keep teaching, and I told my students that I'm going to teach what I teach, and what I've been doing is I've been putting, my references. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Supreme Court, I've been putting them on the board on our little screen there. I said, and if that's the case, they will know what I'm teaching from. That's my curriculum.
Well, if they come at me, I'm hiring you and we're suing everybody.
I'm not going to represent you because I'll be busy.
Protecting yourself.
No.
It could be the Zendejas University of Omaha.
No. Is that about it, Kenny? I'm sort of spent right now.
Well, and we shouldn't be laughing about it. It's not a funny issue. It's not an issue that these.
Well, if you don't laugh, what are you going to do? You're just going to get arrested. So might as well keep laughing.
Which we always know could potentially be in my future.
What do you mean in your future, in your past, your current? You still got that parole you have to finish off.
Actually, I have missed most of the protests the past few years because of COVID.
And that's probably a good thing for you.
The grandmothers are ready to go.
All right. Well, we'll see. We're going to try to keep a consistent Thursday 4:00 schedule. So
we'll be back next Thursday.